Well, I'm delighted today to be speaking to David Butterworth from Manninvest here on a very sunny day in Douglas. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to chat a little bit more about Manninvest because it's quite an interesting, unique business. And we're also going to talk, I guess, about the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in the Isle of Man and what you observe of relocators coming in with fresh energy and ideas. But first of all, tell us a little bit more about Manninvest and the company you set up.
Okay, so Manninvest is 7 years old this year. It was set up by Chris Eaton and I following many trips to China back when the Isle of Man used to be particularly sort of targeting China as a potential route for immigration, also for investment. And we decided that there was a business opportunity there. Chris runs a very successful CSP, ILS. So Chris and I decided it was an opportunity. So we set the business up initially to look at investment from China and Hong Kong into predominantly the Isle of Man, but also the UK, and also assisting Isle of Man businesses that wanted to maybe go and look at China as a potential opportunity. ILS itself had offices at the time in Shanghai and Beijing and Hong Kong. So that's how the business started. It's changed somewhat over the years. The immigration policies have changed from the UK. The Isle of Man policies pretty much mirror what there is in the UK, but again, because the Isle of Man is the Isle of Man, we have the ability to tweak it slightly to better suit our own requirements.
Because you've got the Innovator visa here. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that and who that works for and is targeting?
Okay, so the Innovator is the main visa that the Isle of Man offers. So it splits into three categories really. The first one is the startup. So that's aimed at people that haven't run a business before. It's their first rodeo, if you like, and they've basically then got a period of about 2.5 years to prove that the business is sustainable. Came out of the UK visa, which is very, very similar, predominantly aimed at graduates leaving university in the UK.
Would that be sort of some proven revenue or some interest from investors, or how would they kind of prove, or it's just the fact that they're still going and it's viable?
No, I mean, for the startup visa, it really is, I've got an idea, give me 2.5 years to prove that it will work. And there's no investment required.
And at the end of the 2.5 years?
In the end of the 2.5 years, they have to then convert it into the proper Innovator visa, which is the main visa that we offer. That visa requires a £50,000 investment into the business. The person doing the investment has to be a director and work in the business. That business over the next 3 years needs to create 3 jobs, so 1 in year 1, 1 in year 2, 1 in year 3. So by the end of 3 years, they have 3 people working for the business. Obviously it has to be sustainable, so it still has to be going and everything like that. And then from the individual, they have to come and live and work on the Isle of Man. They have to become tax residents on the Isle of Man, and they have to meet the immigration requirement, which is they must spend at least 180 days in what we term the common travel area, which is UK, Isle of Man, Jersey, Guernsey and Ireland.
Is there a language test, or just by the fact they've got to spend a lot of time and interact with people, it's given that they will?
No, there's an English test, depending on where they got the degree from, where their education from is. Otherwise, yes, they do have to pass an English test up to level B2.
And what kind of sectors do you see coming utilising this, particularly on the startup side or the Innovator visa? Are there certain fields that you attract more business within?
Yeah. I mean, I would say a lot of the interest that we get is from technology. I mean, the Isle of Man's got a good reputation, primarily on the back of e-gaming, for being a good tech hub. We've done some interesting stuff around Bitcoin and things like that. So from that point of view, a lot of them are technology focused. The business has to be innovative, so it has to be endorsed by the Department of Enterprise, and they're very keen to make sure that it's not an existing business. So you can't, for instance, set up a cafe or a restaurant or a hotel. It has to be innovative.
Some genuine IP.
So if we look at them, a lot of them, we've got animation businesses, we've got a music school, we've got an import-export business, we've got a business working in the e-gaming sector. So it's quite a diverse sector, but it tends to err towards a technology focus.
Yeah, and it's got to be rubber stamped effectively to
It has
validate
to
it.
be endorsed by the Department of Enterprise, and the Department of Enterprise have a rigorous process that they go through. They want to make sure you're going to create the jobs, they want to make sure the business is innovative, and they want to make sure that the founder or the innovator is committed to running and working within the business on the Isle of Man.
And what kind of services do you provide then to support those new businesses coming here?
Okay, so the process very quickly we go through is we do an interview initially with the innovator to establish all those facts that the business is innovative, that they are sure they want to come and live and work on the Isle of Man. From that point of view,
They're committed.
They're committed, yeah. We then enter into a contract with them, and the process is typically what we do is we help them develop the business plan. So we've got experience, my own background and the team's background in sort of startups and innovative business. So we help them put the business plan together. We then discuss that with the Department of Enterprise, take their feedback. Once the Department of Enterprise is happy with it, we then typically organise a face-to-face meeting between the Department of Enterprise and the innovator so they can get to meet each other. People always like face-to-face meetings from that point of view. Once they're happy, we then submit the business plan. Then the Department of Enterprise gives us a 30-day window, which time they will endorse it or come back for further information. Once that's endorsed, we then move on and help them with the visa application. We're not lawyers, so if the client requires legal advice, then we'll refer them, and there's many very good lawyers on the Isle of Man that work in that space. Once they have the visa, that's really when the work starts. They then need to come to the Isle of Man within 3 months of receiving the visa, so they then need to find accommodation, they need to register the business, they might need to find business premises, they've got to get registered for tax. You can imagine relocating from the other side of the world. So we provide effectively a concierge service. So we provide a single point of contact and say, okay, David, here is Ron. Ron will now look after you and talk you through the process. It's always different. Some of them have children, so therefore there's schooling to be looked after. Some of them may already be in the UK, so there's relocation, that type of thing. Or in some cases, we've got a client coming in a couple of weeks' time from Shanghai. You can imagine logistically that's quite a big exercise with relocating a apartment and a partner and everything like that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the origin of the business was looking at that China opportunity, but now it's sort of more diverse geographically. So where do you see as key markets for the customer? Where do you see interest coming from geographically?
So geographically, obviously now that China's opened up again, we still do get, because
it's
of
a huge market, isn't it?
Huge market. So we get a lot of interest from Hong Kong, and we get a lot of interest from mainland China. Obviously India, huge, diverse, growing, very young population.
And switched on for the tech sector, isn't it? So
very switched on from the tech sector. So we get a lot of interest from India. Nigeria again is very interesting because they do have a lot of very young, very entrepreneurial tech people. Often where you live in an economy which isn't quite maybe as developed, then they're a lot more innovative in how they use tech. They can't just buy a new iPhone, a new computer and all the latest tech. So they tend to be a bit more frugal with it and a little bit more innovative. More recently, we've had inquiries from Sudan, from Egypt, Dubai. Again, Dubai is an interesting source because a lot of people relocate to Dubai, and as you know, when you come to the end of your employment in Dubai, then you have to leave. So we get some, let's say, more mature innovators that are saying, right, let's come to the Isle of Man. We like the location, we like the weather. We like what the Isle of Man has got to offer. Yeah,
because I suppose you've got like the startup character is trying to get their business off the ground, but for a more sort of seasoned entrepreneur, if you like, I mean, what do you see as the appeal for the more seasoned entrepreneurs, maybe had an exit, still involved in business, but at a different point in their career to the person trying to get off the ground?
I mean, I mentioned to you before how we do the initial interview or the chat with you if you're the entrepreneur, and we talk about the benefits of the Isle of Man, so its safety, how fairly unpopulated the Isle of Man is.
Yeah.
I mean, the key driver for a lot of them is the Isle of Man is very, very open to immigration.
Yeah.
You know, the government policy
want
is
people, yeah.
the government policy is to grow from 80 to 100,000.
Yeah.
We need to invite people. There's not a lot of places in the world at the moment that are completely open to immigration.
Yeah.
A lot of the golden visa routes are starting to close down.
Yeah.
The Isle of Man isn't. And then we talk about, you know, property, depending where you come from, can be seen as relatively cheap. The Isle of Man's very open to business. I know you've probably heard this every time you speak to anybody, but it is very, very easy to get a meeting with the Department of Enterprise or with a minister, or walk them into one of the banks or into one of the lawyers or one of the accountancy firms. And generally, I mean, I've lived and worked all my life on the Isle of Man. It's a very entrepreneurial, can-do type approach, and that makes a big difference. That's what I think attracts the right sort of innovators to come to the island.
And do you travel yourself to go and meet people and to try and drum up, you know, interest and awareness of the Isle of Man? Where do you find yourself going?
Well, it was interesting because prior to COVID, I used to go to China and Hong Kong 2-3 times a year. I've been to China, I think, about 20 times. Since COVID, we've tended to be quite based here because the clients come to us, but we will be. I mean, I'm off down to Hong Kong later on this year. We're due to go out to India, and we're starting to put together a sort of a program of saying, well, where do we want to go? Where are we seeing the business for our business? And let's go there. We've got, you know, as I said, if I look at the 4 innovators we're working with at the moment, we've got one from Nigeria, one from Shanghai, and one from India, and one from Philippines.
Fantastic.
They're all quite keen because if you've successfully relocated to the Isle of Man, you've obviously got another group of people that are also looking at it. So probably on the back of that, we'll probably go to those places.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you for talking to me today, David. We really look forward to sharing this interview.
Okay, pleasure. Thank you very much.
The latest technical content delivered through global conversations with professionals for professionals.